everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. I know there's a lot going on here, so I appreciate you to spend the next time with us. I'm Bruce Schneier, and this is John Bruce. I'm a security technologist. I work at the intersection of security technology and people. And way back in 2016, I wrote an essay that said that data is a toxic asset. And the point I was making is that data has some value, but it also comes with risk, right? It is personal data, it is data about your customers, it is data that someone else wants, it is data that can get stolen, that can get ransomed, that can get published, and then you will be blamed when that happens, right? So if you have your data, you have to secure it. That's hard to do. And when it's released, it's not great. And I'm also arguing that it's not that valuable. So I'm thinking of it as a toxic asset, right? And we can talk about all the data breaches that are evidence of that position. I also said something else, that I thought we were at the sort of the top of the big data hype curve. If you remember 2016, it was all about big data. The more you have, the better decisions you can make. And it actually turned out not to be true. There's a lot of diminishing returns in data. We know this about marketing, like that more personalized marketing data isn't always better. And that risk-reward calculation, is it worth it to save? Should we throw it away? Is going to change, right? So even though it's become cheaper and easier to store data, it's more dangerous. And I figured people would start deleting the data. All right, so that was my prediction almost 10 years ago. So what did I miss? I missed large language models, right? Which is basically the essence of the big data hype, right? If you have a whole lot of data, you shove it into an LLM, it becomes more powerful. Now, there are caveats there, but basically, this marginal value data has more utility than it did back then. At least more utility to the companies building the LLMs, right? If you are Google, Facebook, Meta, OpenAI, Anthropic, right? You are effectively the oil refineries of the big data LLM economy. Now, you know how to take that data and turn it into something useful. But if you are pretty much anybody else who's not making their own LLM, it's still a toxic asset because you don't need to build the core model. What you need is access to it, right? You need the ability to use it when you have to, but it doesn't give you that generative value that it does to the LLM companies. Now, so this is interesting. So the LLM companies are making the models, but other companies don't really need the actual data because the value, the intelligence, the information is decoupled from the data. And sort of what I'm saying is, if you don't need your customer's data, you just need access to it. Right? If you are an airline, a hotel, you don't necessarily need to store the data as long as you know you can get it when you need it. And that's the difference. Right? Because what we're going to all be doing is taking those core models, combining it with our personal, corporate, organizational data, and using it to do stuff. Right? And that is actually really different. That is a different security problem and one that takes a really different security solution.
And there you have it. There's classic Bruce. Always thinking about the security, always thinking about the risks, keeping us safe. I think more about the opportunities. I'm John Bruce. I'm the CEO of Inrupt. And I'm thrilled that Bruce is our Chief of Security. It's actually our third company together. And the last one we had, that was acquired by IBM. And it was while we were at IBM that I was introduced to my co-founder, somebody you'll probably know. His name is Tim Berners-Lee. Hi, Tim. And Tim told me about his view of the web. And later on this afternoon, we'll talk more about that on the main stage if you get the chance. Now, Tim had been working on a technology whilst at MIT called Solid. And what Solid did is it allowed a totally different relationship between corporations and governments and their constituents. It allowed a more direct relationship, less fraught with challenges of privacy and security and trust. And Tim espoused all the benefits for the individual in a truly visionary way. Me, I'm more of a corporate guy. And while I was IBM, I was traveling the world talking to large corporations. So what I got the chance to do was to talk to them about Tim's vision. And so I started to test it out with them. I said, what if you could have access to a broad array of your customers' data without being responsible for securing it or for the privacy around it? And they said, well, yeah, we'd love that. But that's not the way it works, right? I said, yeah, but if it could work that way, would you be interested? And they said, absolutely. So we co-founded Inrupt to bring Solid to the world. And it's fabulous, actually, that Bruce has joined us as our Chief of Security. And now we've got maybe 10 minutes left to tell you 3 things. What is it about Solid that brings a whole universe of data together? 2, and I'll let Bruce handle this bit, why is that so critical for security as we move forward, particularly with AI in mind? And finally, what can corporations, or better said, organizations do to leverage the advantage of this? So first, let me talk a little bit about Solid. Think of it as a digital wallet. And now we all know what digital wallets are, right? We probably all use them today. There's 4 billion of them out there, and we probably use them getting coffee this morning or coming here on the train, the plane, whatever. I mean, they're really useful, but they're very transactional. They're very limited in their use. But that's just the beginning, actually. It's about as much relevance to where we're going with wallets as, I remember the old rotary phones, the Bakelite rotary phones, and I don't have it with me, but my iPhone, massively different. And that's the difference in the wallets of today and the wallets of where we're going. So let me talk to you about a Solid wallet. What it does is it takes a whole universe of data into account. Now, first is the data you're all familiar with. The data I mentioned earlier, the transactional data, the data we're used to in our Apple or Google wallets. Plane tickets, boarding passes, some digital IDs, and so on. And it's got utility. But it's static. You don't edit it. Gives you utility, but in a very limited way. Now, the second kind of data is your private data. And as the name implies, that's all the information pertinent to you, relevant to you. Your preferences, your history, things you like, everything you own in your own data area, your private data. And then there's the last area of data, and that's publicly available data. We're all used to it. It's the web. It's thank you, Tim, again, for inventing the web. It's all the data that we're used to when we go Google search anything. Now, where this gets really interesting is in the overlap areas, when you can combine private and public data, or transactional and private data, in a way that gives you very directly personal relevance. So you know, if I'm looking for a restaurant in Lisbon tonight, I go on Google, I search restaurants, I see where they are, I look at a map, I look at my schedule, I figure out when am I going to be off the stage, because Tim and I are together later today on the main stage. When am I going to be off the stage? Okay, it'll take me half an hour to get into Lisbon. I happen to like particular kinds of food, and I pick a restaurant. But when you have a Solid wallet, It knows those things because it understands your private data and it can access public data. So it can operate in those overlap areas. But the big question is, how do we do it safely? And that's a question better answered by Bruce than I.
All right. So look at that diagram. Right? If an AI assistant's going to work, it's going to have to know a lot about us, right? The more it knows about us, the better it is. And this is kind of security terrifying, because I'm going to want this thing with me 24/7, training on what I do. So think about, when you think about digital wallet, it's not the same as like a Dropbox. Dropbox is like a safe. It's where you put stuff to get it later. Everything in your wallet is something that you eventually want to use, want to share, want to interact with. Right? You carry it in your pocket because it has things in there you are going to need when you're out in the world. And it's kind of, I mean, making that work for real is a trust and security nightmare. Right? It's relatively easy if it's a little thing in my pocket. But we're going to imagine it way bigger than that because it's not constrained by what fits in your pocket. Right? So service providers can manipulate it. It's going to be hard to know when someone else uses that. I mean, think of it as my driver's license or my identity card. The wallet paradigm is the way to think about the right combination of control and access. And I want to make this AI assistant work for me, so I'm going to need fine-grained control. I'm going to need to be able to keep the data within my trust boundary. I'm also going to need to share it, and sometimes have it shared without my knowledge. You think about my medical data. If there's an emergency, I want it shared. Maybe you can't ask me. Or there are things that might happen regularly that I want to, just don't bother me. I trust that. There's a lot of different ways to think about trust. All right, so you think about how this would work for a company. So imagine you are a company trying to secure an AI system that is processing your customers' data, and because we're living in the modern world, it's got multiple cloud providers, perfectly reasonable. So you've got different authentication systems, you've got different types and quality of audit trails, you've got configuration, hoping everything works, and this is very much a configuration nightmare. Right? The security is difficult because there isn't just sort of one way to make it work. The neat thing about Solid as a protocol, I don't know if John said, this is a W3C standard protocol. This is like standard protocol, that it is a unified standard for data ownership, for data sharing, right? And we can use OAuth level standardization for data access. And then you get an audit trail, which is comprehensive and is audit. And now I can run scripts against it, or I can have alerts against it. And really importantly, your data stays compartmentalized to you. So if there's a breach in this hotel chain or that airline or that retailer, it doesn't affect you, right? You get security vertically instead of trusting everyone horizontally. And I think this is a really important paradigm. I think of it almost as the Gmailization of email, in a way that allows you to leverage your personal data store, like your personal email box. It is yours. You can put it wherever you like. You can move it. You have fine-grained control. You can alias it. Whole bunch of power you get. And you, or an organization, can power an AI with it in a way that's scalable, that's safe, that's just easy to do. That kind of just works. So I actually see this as kind of a new level of safe AI and efficiency because of the natural data integrity, right? Because the people are owning their data and there's less risk overall. All right, now we're passing it to him. We have this back and forth thing going on. I hope you like it.
Yeah, we have to do. So this is actually the next critical stage of the web, per Tim. the man who invented it, the man who's been looking after it and nurturing it for the last 30 years. And the good news is it's proven. This technology works in the way we describe. But we've only just started to promote it. You're some of the very first people to hear about it. And what that makes for is a really interesting window of opportunity for everybody. And that's proven, as we travel the world and talk to people, to be of really interesting news to big organizations who've been really struggling with the big data paradigm. When you give solid wallets to your customers or your citizens, they can store all kinds of data in them for all kinds of purposes. Not just to store a ticket or to buy a cup of coffee, but to store data that's pertinent to them and make it available to the organizations that want to service them with their consent. Who their friends are, where they're going on holiday, and on and on and on. Their health data, their financial data. And it takes us from a transactional world of today's wallets to a place where we as customers and citizens can have a much better relationship with the organizations we interact with our consent. And for organizations, it takes them out of a myopic view of us into a much richer view of us, one where they can truly give us the kind of things we will appreciate. And it opens up opportunities that otherwise you'd never get to see. You can quickly go from being a finance app to a way that people will help manage their finances generally, from being a way to get a ticket onto a plane to being a way you could manage your travel experience.
So I want to, if you think about it, what the web did is it decoupled data from data presentation. And then through different identity management systems, we decoupled applications from security, from authentication. Right? What this does is it decouples data from applications. And that's really powerful. It's generative in super interesting ways. I mean, AI is like the obvious one right now, but I think there's a lot of generativity that's unlocked when you put data in a wallet in a way that other applications can use it. And that doesn't work today.
Right. And it's doable. It works. You know, Bruce used to say, this is hard. When we first started to do this, he said, this is hard. He said, but it's not like putting somebody on the surface of the sun hard. It's like putting somebody on the surface of the moon hard. And I appreciated that, because that's how it feels. It's tractable.
And I think this isn't even that hard. Maybe think about the massive engineering efforts it takes for something like the space program. The reason that's hard is because all the pieces have to be invented. We're now in an area where all the pieces are here. We just need to put them together. This is like assembling the rocket hard.
And that's us done. So thank you for your time. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you all. See you around.
Thank you. Bye.